Nu, pulkstens jau 14:31, mēs varam sākt.
We can begin the last part of the conference. Let's begin with the bad news, that soon the conference will be over. But the good news is that you will get your certificates very soon. I hope that you had a nice coffee break, that you drank coffee and had some water and food. And then, now we're going to talk about a body weight evaluation for young athletes. So I will give the floor to Melita Sauka. She has studied in Norway. Good afternoon. I would like to give more precise definition of what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about body mass index. So we talked a lot about body mass index, and people say insufficient body weight, overweight, and obesity. We use these terms, but everywhere, and also here in the conference, we talk about overweight and obesity. But if we think more widely, there is normal body weight, and we will have health problems both when we have too large body mass and when we also have too small body mass. So if you see this curve, you see that those people who are very thin have health problems earlier than those who have overweight. So now I would like you to have a look at death risk comparison based on body mass index and physical fitness levels in men. If you have good physical level, then you have not so many health problems. So there's not a big difference whether we're thin, fat, or in normal weight. If we are very well at being physically fit. If you're not physically fit, if you're not physically fit and you're thin, you have very high risk of being unhealthy. And also, if you're very fat, the percentage of being unhealthy is very high. So we use body mass index, but it does not differentiate between body fat and fat-free or lean mass in the body. Because the most important thing is that not the weight is the biggest problem, but the amount of fat in the body is the biggest problem that causes unhealthy unhealth. And another thing is that if we use this body mass index for assessing the health, it is not possible to tell whether that kid who has a normal weight or overweight, is he healthy or not? But some sportsmen have too little fat in body, but he or she has normal muscle weight, but there still might be health problems because of this low fat in body. It has not been found that overweight athletes with greater body mass have a greater health risk than those with normal weight. So we can see that we talk about one thing, but actually we do something else. Actually, we need to talk about fat amount in the body. You need lean mass, you need muscle mass in the body, because all the physical performances are based on muscle mass. It means that you cannot lose your muscle mass. If we talk about children, if children are thin, those student athletes are thin, and by using BMI we cannot see whether he has enough fat in the body. if we use just BMI, we cannot diagnose early and prevent health problems related to low fat amount in the body. We cannot diagnose early malnutrition related to health risks, hormonal disorders, amenorrhea, and osteoporosis. So basically those who are very thin, they have problems with bone density, and it may lower up to 70% of the norm, and so you might get more fractures because of this low density. How can we calculate how much fat do you have in the body? Excuse me. So what our center does, and what you have seen, is measurements of folds of fat. Our specialists measure fold of fat, but if we talk about kids who don't move a lot, then it's okay. But if we talk about athletes, athletes don't have a typical fat distribution compared with non-athletes, so it's not very precise to measure their folds of fat. That's why we've been investing new methodology how to measure fats. So there is bioelectrical impedance analysis method. The method is based on the principle that the body tissues have different electrical conductivity. Basically, there's no water in adipose tissues. So adipose tissues has a poor electrical conductivity, while other tissues have good conductivity. So based on the properties of the tissue, body mass composition is divided into fat mass and lean mass. So this difference of water in different tissues tells us how much fat we have in our body. So the body mass composition. So we are interested in fat-free mass or lean mass and fat mass. We use terms lean mass, but it's not very precise because there's a lot of water, and we cannot say that water is lean mass. That's why we use the term fat-free mass. So you can find all of these results. Those who go to Riga and sportsmen who do their checkups in Riga, we put them on multi-frequency bioelectrical impedance analyzer, XScan plus 2. So we use multi-frequencies to analyze total muscle mass in left hand, right hand. We see asymmetrics. We see where we have more muscles or less muscles. And it would be really good if the coach could be able to read the results of this scanning, because it's not very difficult. If you have all the data, then you can work with the data. So this analyzer determines the total quantity of fat, fat-free mass, total water in the body, which is another important thing is bone mineral content and muscle mass. It's very good statistical data if we talk about sportsmen and athletes. The problem could be with that that the measurements of folds of fat are not the same as the multi-frequency bioelectrical impedance analyzer. So what we, if you really want to follow the data of one sportsman, you have to do it all the time on the same analyzer, because if you use different methods and different analyzers, the results might differ. So you need to stick to one method and one type of scanner. So like a small summary, the body mass, if we analyze fat and fat-free mass, characterizes state of health of sportsmen much better, and the changes of body mass composition may be associated with health problems. So most athletes have increased fat-free mass and decreased fat in the body. And you have to take that into account because their body is different. And the amount of fat in the body is very important for health. International Pediatric Association has come up with a standard what would be the best body fat percentage in boys and girls. So if you compare measurements of folds of fat and measurements of multi-frequency bioelectrical impedance, the results will be a bit different. So if you need to know whether there is a problem or not, use either of methods because the results will differ minimally. So sportsmen need muscle mass, and fat usually has been considered as something bad, but it's not entirely true. But boys should not have lower than 5% of body mass and girls should not have lower than 12% of body mass. When you have to evaluate other children who are not so athletic, it is determined that boys shouldn't have less than 7% of fat and girls should not have lower than 14%. It's very low level of fat if boys have 7 to 10% of fat and girls have 14 to 17 for girls of fat. So good percentage is 13 to 17% of fat for boys and 20 to 25% for girls. So these are numbers that are topical nowadays. That's a standard if we really think about health and well-being. With this analyzer, we have come up with percentile scales. So we have checked more than 14,000 kids. We have compiled all the data in groups of 1 to 100. And so we have 100 percentiles, and we have come up with the ideal results. So these are sportsmen, athletes here in Latvia, and amount of fat in their bodies. So if we look at the amount of fat in their bodies, this is the best way how to evaluate how much fat they have and what is healthy norm. So you have to use the data of the population. So the same kind of studies have been done in Europe for kids, and we can see that these data under the second percentile is for kids who have health problems. So here we can see the 50th percentile. It means half. Half of the kids are on the one side and half of the kids are on the other side. So in this case, the curve on the top is the 50th percentile in the EU study, and where you see blue curve, that's the second percentile, that underneath that percentile kids have health problems. So let's have a look at sportsmen, at athletes. The first group, those are all those sports where they have weight limits, fighting sports, rowing, and there are not many children involved in this. This is the statistics for boys, and as you can see, up to the age of 14, they are below the second percentile, and the rest of the children up to the 14 years or and those involved in aesthetic sports up to 15 years, like more than half of the kids are below this percentile, so they might have serious health problems. So half of the athletes at the age of 11 and 12, they're lower than the second percentile. So our sportsmen are very thin. The second sports group is aesthetic sports up to the age of 15. Half of the athletes are below this healthy percentile. And weight limit for sports where there are no weight limits up to the age of 14, the results of the 50th percentile are below the recommended. So the same results for girls. Girls need fat in body. That's why you can see that the lower curve is for aesthetic sports, where we have data only until 13 years old. But the rest of the girls are okay because their bodies work differently. So we have to think about health of boys more than girls, looking from this point of view. So evaluation of the amount of fat percentage by using percentile scale. What will you see? So you have 5 levels. The same also with percentage of fat, and you will see that very low percentage of fat is everything below the 20th percentile. Below average results in 20th till 39th percentile, medium 40 till 59th percentile, above average 60th till 80th percentile, and high above 80th percentile. And here you can see those thresholds. So here you can see boys, and if it says very low, it means that the results are below the 20th percentile. But if you have a look at the recommended values from the Pediatric Association, you will see that if you see the boys have very low level of fat, you have to start worry about that. And you don't have to be worried if it says high, because for kids these norms are very different. So basically, you need to have a look whether the percentage of body is not very low, of body fat is not very low. So if we have a look at girls, very low means up to age of 13. And later on you will see that even girls, if the results say very low, it might be normal. If after the age of 13 the results say high, you need to take care to lose the body fat, because that's too much. So if the result says medium, then you don't have to worry about anything. So we can see evaluation of amount of fat percentage by using percentile scales. So by using these results, we came up with statistics. And the statistics are as follows. We have for 19.2% of boys and 15.1% of girls, their fat percentage is lower than the recommended one. It's below 14%. So boys are thinner than girls, and more boys are thin than girls. Basically, the books usually talk about girls and being thin, but just a couple of years ago we started to get worried about boys who are too thin. If girls have too little fat, there might be some menstrual problems and so on. But now we take care of boys as well, because this is not only a problem for girls, but this is only a problem for boys, and we have to see who actually suffers more from the too small amount of fat in the body. So according to the data, who train at sports schools or sports clubs. So we started measuring fat starting from the age of 10. So the older the children, the less athletes there are actually, but every 5th athlete which trains at sports schools or sports club has an insufficient amount of fat in the body, and we need to think more about intake of energy so that we intake as much as we spend. And it's actually connected with the fact that children are growing in this age, and we have to evaluate the amount of fat in the body in order to understand why and what kind of health problems we have. So I want to repeat again that body mass index does not diagnose the lack of fat in the body of athletes. So comparison of body mass index and body fat percentage by using bioelectrical impedance method. If we say that BMI is low, it's not enough. Actually, we haven't seen very many athletes who are children that they have too low body mass index. But if we look at these statistics analysis of bioelectrical impedance method, we can see that the fat is not enough. So you can see that you can see in this table that if they have too high body mass index, actually they're not fat. They have very much muscles, like muscle weight. So when we are talking about children and their health, and when we use statistics, and when you want to understand what is what, do not use terms overweight children and obese children together, but isolate each group. Because when it comes to obesity, you have to see the difference, who has too much fat and who has muscle weight. So if you have 3,000 kids who do sports here, half of them will have extra body mass, like too high body mass index, because they have muscles. So I think that statistically we can calculate anything, but we really need to understand what that statistics consist of. Why are we so worried about fat? So fat is very important in the body. So fat serves as a building material in the body's tissues. It serves as a mechanical cover around organs. Of course, there is a difference if very thin kid plays hockey or a kid who has a little bit of fat plays hockey. And those who have to spend a lot of energy in their sports, who run long distances and so on, it's a good energy source. So fat is an endocrine organ. So we synthesize a lot of compounds by adipose tissues that are necessary to body. So that's why it is very important that the fat percentage is not too low. And here you can see the most important compounds that are dependent on adipose tissue. And if you don't have this fat in the body, your physiological functions won't be good enough. So it's not that fat is only energy source and not only building material, but it's important for compounds as well. So reduced amount of fat in the body. So it means that you have insufficient intake of food, but you have very big physical activity. So if you have too little fat, there are menstrual disorders for girls. So if you have insufficient energy reserves and too low fat, you have a risk of osteoporosis. And it's called athlete triad, and usually it's used when we talk about girls, because one of the biggest problems is menstrual disorders, and there are a lot of research on athlete triad. So it's usually when there are intense workouts, which is not bad, but it's combined with unhealthy eating habits, and then they lose weight in an unhealthy manner. Then there are menstrual disorders, and the bone density lowers. So bone density builds up to the age of 22 years. If adolescents are not physically active, their bone density is not strong enough. So you need to have physical activities to build up that bone density. After of age 22, you start using up that bone density. So when we check our girls, those who are 15, 16, and 17 years old, when they will be 50, 55 years old, they might have serious health issues. Since April 2014, taken into account that this is not only girls' problem, but that's also problem of boys, that actually we have found out that the main problem is not with the fat, but with energy provision, energy supply. So International Olympic Committee has changed the term of athletes triad to relative energy deficiency in sport, red S. So you intake too little energy and you spend too much energy. So there is energy disbalance. So relative energy deficiency syndrome. So here you can see the triad. All the time it was written and studied that there's these problems, but actually there are many problems. Not only menstrual dysfunction. So, of course, ballerines are smaller, but otherwise this might be related to all the sportsmen. So there might be cardiovascular system problems, gastrointestinal tract problems, endocrine functions problems, and so on, if we don't think about the healthy nutrition. So if we might come up with a survey we might study whether a kid who have had concussion, whether it's good or not good to do sports. But we can also analyze whether a kid who have had red S, whether it's good or not to do sports afterwards. So energy provision. So you need to why do we need to see how much fat do we have in the body? Because you need to know how much to intake. So you need food where there is 30 to 45 calories per 1 fat-free mass kilogram. So sportsmen need to intake more energy than people who don't do any sports. So you need to intake 30 to 45 calories per 1 fat-free mass kilogram. But if you don't intake that amount, the muscle mass will reduce. So here are the problems related to relative energy deficiencies effect. So increased risk of injury. I'm sure you don't want to experience that. Reduced training efficiency, difficulty in decision making, reduced coordination, reduced ability to concentrate, irritability, depression, reduce glycogen reserves, and decreases muscle strength and resistance reduction. So, of course, I'm not saying that athletic performance is based only on what's in his or her head, but they have to have very good physiological functions, and then there will be good physical performance. At the sports centers, we don't spend much time on doing surveys about food and nutrition, but we know that there's too little energy intake. But we just have statistics, but there's nothing much done about that. So sport medicine center residents, they visited Riga choreography school, and ballet dancers actually have the same health problems that have sportsmen who do gymnastics. So what we can see is that 42.1% of young ballet dancers do not intake the recommended amount of energy of 35 to 45 calories per 1 kilogram fat-free mass. Half of them are starving. So those ballet dancers who intake less than this amount, they also receive less macronutrients and less vitamins. It means that the quality of the nutrition, the food, if you're in starvation, there's very low quality of nutrition. These girls, every single time when they're practicing, students went to these girls and they asked them, what did you eat yesterday? Maybe you ate something more, maybe you eat something between trainings and so on. And then they processed the data and came up with the statistics. Those girls were 12 to 14 years old ballet dancers. So, but the fat percentage did not differ statistically significantly between the two groups. So they have very low level of body fat. So the black stripe in the middle, that's the average. And then you have the amount of fat in their bodies from to. First time when we saw the data, we thought it might not be true. There must be a mistake. We need to calculate this once again. But there's no mistake. I read through some publications. This is a book by doctor. He's a national team's doctor, and he works with nutrition. And this national team has very good results. And according to him and according to his research, it means that in case of starvation, at the threshold of fat percentage, no more fats are reduced, but the muscle mass. So in case of so if a person does not eat, he doesn't have energy, and the muscle mass is spent up to provide a person with energy. So if a person starts eating normally again, the body remembers that there was starvation and piles up everything in fat, in adipose tissue, not in muscles. So you don't have to follow how much fat you eat, but what is the relation in your body of lean mass, of muscle mass, and fat mass. So it's not possible to say that you have to have 7% of fat and that's it, because we're very different. Sportsmen are different and we're different. But you cannot allow a situation where muscle weight is decreased but the fat stays the same. So you have to work on keeping the muscle mass. So at the end, at the conclusions, I would say that we have to think more about fat percentage. And talking about athletes, forget about body mass index because it doesn't help, and don't weight your kid every day, daily, because it doesn't give any useful information actually. But then we had a look at those ballet dancers who eat too little. Those are the girls who are now growing rapidly, and now they have been asked to maintain weight. But actually, they have to. It's almost impossible because they are growing. So basically, they are losing muscle mass, and their physical performance gets worse. So you have to take into account that children are growing. So you need to keep track of how much energy you intake and what fat percentage there is in body. Take care of yourselves, take care of your children, and thank you for all of you who have involved children in sports. And I'm trying to explain to everybody that overweight children and sportsmen, it's actually normal thing because the weight consists of muscles. Melita, I got an SMS. Hi, here's Alfred writing from Gulbene. We have a friend. We have a friend who we call Fat Guy, and he says that he has high bone density. When can we start calling him fat? So if you measure his fat percentage and the fat percentage is higher than 25%, then you can call him fat. But of course, there is also a difference in bone density for each person. When I was in sports, I remember that we had sports checkup once a year, that we had to do squats and check breathing and so on. What about now? So, Professor Edl said that these sport checkups are not obligatory anymore because the government has changed the policy, but now we have Latvia Sports Medicine Center, and once a year kids come to our center and coaches bring children to our center, and then we also measure this body fat percentage. Thank you.